Chapter 20, The Concrete Jungle. Why Level 11 Isn't What You Think. The darkness around me faded as I regained consciousness in the middle of a massive city, the buildings and skyscrapers seeming to reach for the pale blue sky as a cool breeze swept through the landscape. I stared in awe at the massive clusters of buildings around me, completely forgetting my hunger and pain as I stumbled forwards to get a better view. Holy shit, I gasped as I slowly turned a full circle in one spot. My mind filled with feelings of shock and curiosity as I stared at the hundreds of massive buildings stretching on around me. I staggered back, almost tripping over a metal rail behind me as I continued to gawk over the buildings around me. I snapped out of it and looked around, my eyes exploring the massive cracked roads as they wound around the city. Broken streetlights lined crumbling sidewalks as random bits of trash scattered themselves throughout the streets. "What the hell is this place?" I said as I turned to face the rail I almost tripped on. The deteriorating sign above the tunnel downwards read, "The Backways." That's what that place was? I choked as I backed away from the metal barricade, watching the darkness inside the staircase down with paranoia and fear. "I'm not going back down to that horrible level," I said as I began to run, turning my back to the tunnel leading down to the forgotten metro as I sprinted down the empty streets. "I need to leave this horrible place. I don't care if this level is a safe level. I just want to go home," I said as tears began racing down my cheeks. My heart pounded as my feet slapped the road's concrete 2-minute record again. My heart pounded as my feet slapped the road's cracked asphalt, leaving a trail of tears behind me as I tried to run from my problems. My vision blurred as I began to cry harder, continuing to run straight ahead as my head filled with thoughts of going home. "I want to leave. I don't know what I did or why I'm here, but I don't like this place. I don't want to be here anymore, and I never want to come back," I sobbed as I slowed to a stop. My heart pounded in my chest as I took a few shaky breaths in. "I want food and water," I mumbled softly as my stomach growled loudly. I glanced around the desolate cityscape around me to see a door leading into a nearby building. "Maybe this place has supplies inside the buildings," I mumbled sadly as I began to walk over to the closed gray-colored door ahead of me. The sounds of wind filled the air as a feeling that I was not alone anymore began to set in. "Is someone there?" I called, looking around before running straight for the door. The sounds of my feet on the road surface was all I heard as I slowed down in front of the door, quickly grabbing the handle as I pulled it open. The door hinges screamed loudly, sending chills down my spine as I turned around, searching for any signs of life before slipping into the building. "This place is so eerie already," I said as I let the door slam shut behind me. A cold draft swept around me as I slowly walked down the empty hallway. The white-colored walls were full of cracks and holes. The ceiling was crumbling and some of it was missing, really. "I don't really think it's safe here. Isn't like 90% of this an OSHA violation already?" I said as I glanced behind me. A massive chunk of ceiling laying on the floor was now left. In the past, the sparks flew from the light fixtures. The smell of dust and mold filled the air as I turned to face another door. I hesitated before pulling the handle, jiggling it before sighing. "Locked," I muttered as I stared at the cracked wooden door in resentment. I took a deep breath before looking around for something to break the door down with. I gasped as my eyes fell on a rusted sledgehammer on the ground, covered by a chunk of ceiling tiles that lay abandoned in the hallway to deteriorate over time. I walked over to it and picked it up, getting my hand covered in dust and drywall in the process. "Well, I hope this works," I said as I raised the hammer in the air, bringing it down on the center of the door with a loud crunch. The wood splintered outwards, revealing a main chamber on the first floor. "There's furniture here?" I cried as I began smashing down the door with the sledgehammer. My eyes locked on the old 1990s-style sofa and table ahead. I swung the sledgehammer over and over until a hole I could squeeze through was formed. "That means there has to be supplies, too," I exclaimed as I burst through the splintered wood and entered the main lobby. I ran over to the sofa and looked around in awe. The inside of the room I was in was filled with 1980s to 1990s styles furniture. A thick layer of dust settling over everything as age swallowed the building whole. The air was dense and filled with dust and debris, giving a thin, cloudy look to everything. An empty elevator shaft blocked over with rusty metal bars lay to my right, confirming the building had more accessible floors somewhere. I ran over to what looked like a desk and stared in awe at the mass amount of items littering the desk drawers and surface. "Almond water!" I cried as I reached over the dusty wooden table part of the desk and grabbed a half-full bottle of almond water. The plastic container itself filled me with relief and joy as I removed the cap. The sweet smell of the liquid tickled my nose as I brought the bottle to my lips and took a swig. Holy shit, I needed that, I said as my body relaxed. My head stopped spinning as my stomach settled for the time being, content with the cool, refreshing liquid. "There has to be more," I said as I ran around the corner of the desk, entering the little space inside as I pulled open the top drawer. A set of 2 batteries rolled to the front of the compartment as I gasped loudly. "Batteries?" I grabbed them instantly and dropped them in my pockets, hoping to find a backpack soon so I could carry things easier as I opened the next 2 drawers. I sifted through the piles of papers covered in unidentifiable symbols and words before shutting the bottom drawer, letting out a sigh of worry as I realized materials were here but still scarce on this level. I stood back up and scanned the top of the desk for resources. "Nothing," I muttered as I stared at a pile of papers in front of me. "This place seems weird, though." I scratched my head. Like it once had people here. I picked up one of the papers from the top of the pile and stared at the unidentifiable language it was written in. But not people. Other people. Some other species with its own language and way of life. I had a yawn. Damn. I set the paper back on the desk again before looking at the area around me. There is no way all of this just spawned in by itself, I muttered as I stared at the 1980s style furniture in the room that filled the room I was in. I began to walk over to the dust-covered sofa in the center of the room as I took in my surroundings. The walls of the lobby were a pale white, the pasty cream-colored wallpaper peeling and cracking in some areas as the smell of rotting plywood filled the air. The floor was made up of The floor was made up of cold white tile that was full of cracks and chunks of missing material. The air was cold and heavy, and the entire place smelled like aged ceramic glass and rotting wood. 7th recording of the day. I'm running out of air. Jesus Christ. The lights that littered the ceiling resembled old office building fixtures with dim white fluorescent lighting hanging off of them. The furniture all looked right out of the 1980s as it was covered in a thick layer of dust. "Well, at least it's something," I muttered as I plopped down on the dusty sofa. A cloud of dust billowed from the sofa cushions as my body put weight on the old, untouched furniture. I sneezed as the dust filled my nose, jerking my head forwards as I sneezed again. "Shit," mumbled as I scrunched up my nose. The dust slowly settled back down around me as I stared at the broken elevator shaft. The metal gate blocking off the elevator was almost completely covered in rust and was missing entire pieces in some areas. This building has other floors, I guess. It seems like that from the elevator I'm seeing. That could mean more supplies and rooms, I said as I slowly rose from the couch I was sitting on. More dust floated in the air as I walked across the lobby towards the elevator shaft. I stopped at the rusted metal gate and peered down the shaft below. The deep chute down seemingly held no end or elevator and was filled with shadows and mold. "Well, I'm not getting anywhere with that," I said as I stepped away from the useless tunnel down in front of me. I turned around and began scanning the lobby for signs of a stairwell, only to find nothing. "So there is no other way to the other floors, then," I said as I came to the realization that the entire building was made up of one floor, consisting of the lobby and back hallways I had entered through. "Well, there are other buildings. There was no front..." I went ahead. I said as I began making my way to the shattered door I had entered through. There was no front door and the entire lobby held no windows. Sorry? Man, my body's, attacking me. I've been reading for the past 3 hours now. I released 8 videos going all the way up to July 5th. I feel pretty accomplished, and it's only 12 o'clock in the morning. I quickly made my way back outside and looked around, searching for any threats or supplies that could be laying around somewhere. What the fuck you mean threats or Okay, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm done after this chapter. Jesus Christ. This place is abandoned. There's nothing here, not even any trees or plant life. Sad as I stared at the dull concrete cityscape around me. The road ahead stretched on in both directions, branching off as it wound through the lifeless cityscape that made up the level. So I'm the only thing here, I said as feelings of despair and sadness began to set in. I began walking down the road, scanning the barren buildings around me as I searched for supplies and resources. The air grew heavy as the smell of aged asphalt and crumbling concrete filled the air around me. Does this place have a night cycle? I said as I watched the barren landscape grow darker in front of me. The warm, heavy air slowly grew... Sorry, I'm looking ahead because I know what's coming, I said as I watched the barren landscape grow darker in front of me. The warm, heavy air slowly grew cold as the ground became covered in shadows. This doesn't seem right. I should find somewhere to rest for the night, I said as I began to run, aiming for a building at the end of the road as I was on as... Damn! At the end of the road I was on as the bright blue sky became a dull gray within minutes. The sounds of whispers surrounded me as I sprinted down the empty street to the front of the building ahead. 2 pages, and then I can finally go to sleep. Damn, I am so prepared to go to sleep and then record tomorrow night, if I feel like it, You only record when you're having fun. That's the YouTube way. But to continue. I don't know if any of these entity things come out when this place hits its apparent nighttime, but I don't want to stick around to find out. I cried as my feet slapped the asphalt. The air became thick and freezing cold as the sky grew dark, turning a dull, lifeless gray as an eerie fog set over the city. I gasped for air as I quickly approached the front door of the building I was going for, the lifeless steel wall that opened into a safe space, sitting quietly and silently as I closed in on it. I glanced around to see the thin fog sweeping through the city, the wave of light gray mist emitting... This is why I'm audio revising, because it sounds weird when you say it and not when you read it in your head. This book took 3 years to write. Of course there's mistakes. I turned to face the door and braced myself as I ran shoulder first into the locking mechanism. The door flew open, causing me to stumble forwards before crashing to the ground. I made it! I panted as I watched the heavy door slam shut behind me. The sounds of whispers filled the empty room I was in as the fog brushed against the bottom of the door. I took a deep breath before getting to my feet, brushing off my jeans as I looked around. The room I was in was covered with a dull white film of dust and mold spores, the scent of rotting concrete and mold filling my nose as my breath caught in my throat. The walls were made up of bumpy gray concrete and the floor was covered in unidentifiable stains and scratches. I stared at the cold gray concrete below my feet with a feeling of... I stared at the cold gray concrete below my feet with feelings of fear stemming from the deep scratches embedded in the ground. What? I shuddered. What made those indents? I choked as I began to think of about what actually lurked within this level. The smell of death filled the room as I glanced over at the door. The sounds of whispering had grown louder, now filling the entire city as it spread throughout the streets. The sounds of something wailing pierced my ears as I snapped out of it. This level isn't abandoned. Something dangerous lives here, I said as I slowly walked backwards away from the door in front of me. The sounds of scratching claws scraping against the road's asphalt pierced the air as I stumbled back, stopping as I stood against the far wall. It's scratching the road, like it's sharpening its claws. I choked as I stared at the door. The air grew freezing cold as the scratching stopped. Don't make any noise, I thought to myself as I stared at the door. The sounds of scratching started up again as the door slowly opened a bit, before slamming shut again. The air began to grow heavy again as the sounds grew further away, allowing me to relax just a bit. I have to get out of this level, I said as I looked around the empty room I was in. My eyes darted around frantically before landing on a rusted metal pipe covered in chunks of drywall and concrete. It had possibly fallen from the ceiling. But first, I need a weapon for whatever is scratching in the dark. I quickly darted over to the metal pipe, grabbing it with one hand as I pulled it from the rubble. My head spun as I looked around nervously, an intense feeling of paranoia and dread filling me to my core. It's time to start dealing with this place once and for all, I said sternly as I tried to push the overpowering aura of fear away. What are you? I muttered as I thought of the thing that had brushed past me just moments ago. My chest felt heavy as my thoughts raced down an empty track, my stomach churning as I walked towards the door. The distant sounds of claws on asphalt continued to rattle the streets as I pushed open the door and walked out into the dead of night. Dun dun dun. Chapter 21. Scratches in the Dark. Why you should never go towards scratches in the backrooms. The eerie fog that settled over the city poured around my legs as it dampened my jeans from the level of my knees downwards. I glanced around fearfully as I held my only source of protection, a rusted metal pipe. The air was freezing, goosebumps littering my arms and legs as the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I held the metal pipe at the ready, gripping it with both hands as I struggled to see through the fog and blanket of shadows that had settled over the lifeless, skitty... New record, 40 seconds before I stuttered. I held the metal pipe at the ready, gripping it with both hands as I struggled to see through the fog and blanket of shadows that had settled over the lifeless cityscape. I really wished that wretched creature that from that flooded metro station hadn't taken my supply bag. I can't see, I muttered as I strained to see more than 10 feet in front of me. The sounds of nearby scratching pierced my ears as I stumbled back, my head jerking to the right as I spotted the Sorry. No AI. Real voice. I muttered as I strained to see more than 10 feet in front of me. The sounds of nearby scratching pierced my ears as I stumbled back, my head jerking to my right as I spotted the source of the terrifying sound. The creature was... ninth chapter of the day, I'm getting choked up. The creature was tall and hunched over, its frame was slender and thin as it lumbered through the fog, dragging a set of massive claws over the asphalt as it walked. The entity was all black and had no visible face or identifiers. Its claws were long and razor-sharp and appeared to be immensely cared for as the creature sharpened them the second they grew dull. The creature didn't seem to have a particular task in mind as it aimlessly lumbered towards me. That thing is huge, I hissed as I gripped the metal pipe with both hands, preparing to fight. The creature appeared to glance up as it abruptly stopped in its tracks. Shit, I muttered as it emitted a low growl. The tall, slender creature began to scratch its claws over the asphalt as it stumbled directly towards me. I took a step back and held the pipe in an attack stance. The creature lunged at me, seeming to have been waiting to see if I was a threat as it swung its set of razor-sharp claws directly at my stomach. I leapt back, just barely dodging the attack as it swung again. The razor-sharp claws whistled through the air as I ducked, the set of deadly talons whizzing over my head. I kicked off the ground and darted left, sprinting down the street as I grew more and more afraid of the lethal force behind me. It knows what it's doing, I cried as vivid images of the creature attacking in the direction of weak spots and vital areas flashed across my mind. I glanced behind me to see the entity was close behind me, its claws held ready for multiple lethal attacks as it pursued its weak and vulnerable target. I darted under an overhang as I wove through the concrete pillars of the city, glancing behind me to see the creature was smart enough to avoid following me. Smart enough to avoid following me and getting slowed down as it began to gain on me on the left side. I began gasping for air as panic and fear spread through my body, death brushing right by me as it began pulling me in. I'm 10 chapters deep for the day. It's been 4 hours. Sorry I'm stuttering. I have to escape this level, now, I cried as I ducked, darting to the right as the creature attacked. My heart rate soared as the creature's claws effortlessly cut through the thick concrete pillar, crossing the overhang and collapsed behind me. A powerful crash shook the ground as I ran as fast as I could for the closest door. The creature's claws scraped the road as it appeared to be sharpening them for another attack. The metal pipe in my hands bounced against my leg as I closed in on the door. I can lose it, I cried as I glanced behind me. The creature swung, its claws whizzing past my face as dust struck down next to me. Holy shit! I cried as I slammed into the wall, flying through the doorway as the creature's claws obliterated the wall behind me. The smell of smoke filled the air as I scrambled to my feet. The metal pipe laid a few feet in front of me as the creature slashed more of the wall away. I just read that. Dust and debris formed the cloud that filled the bottom floor as the creature made its way into the building. I sprinted forwards, leaning down just slightly as I grabbed the metal pipe and booked it for a nearby stairwell I had seen when I came in. The creature continued close behind as its claws dug deep into the floor, sharpening them as they scraped across the solid concrete. That's what made those marks, I cried as I entered the stairwell, glancing behind me to see the creature finish sharpening its claws on the floor as it sped up instantly. I cried out as I sprinted up the stairwell, turning the first corner as the creature's claws tore into the wall as it pursued close behind. It doesn't stop, I cried as it swung at the back of my legs. I stumbled forwards, almost tripping on the stairs as its claws shredded the section of the metal railing behind me. The stairwell grew cold as the entity grew closer behind me, its stamina not seeming to have any end as I began to slow down. "It's gonna catch me! It's gonna catch me!" I cried as I gasped for air, my energy running low as I ascended the 7th-floor stairwell. My shoes slapped against the concrete stairs as I ran, the entity scraping its claws against the concrete stairs as I pursued, leaving deep scratches in the staircase behind it. I glanced over my shoulder as I stumbled over each step, my body growing clumsy and sore as I became aware of how tired I was. "So this is where I die," I said to myself as the entity swung a clawed hand at my back. Things seemed to move in slow motion as the creature's claws tore into my shirt, the razor talons tearing into the surface of my flesh as the back of my t-shirt was torn to shreds. The oxygen in my lungs seemed to freeze as I tripped over the last step on the 12th floor, the entity behind me swiping its claws over my head as I flew face first into the wall, my body screaming in pain as the fresh gashes bled instantly. My eyes were wide with fear as I hit the wall, my body hitting the solid concrete like a sack of potatoes as everything went dark. Segment 2. I regained consciousness on the abandoned stairwell of the building I was attacked in, groaning in pain as my slowly healing wounds tore open as I moved, the giant gashes in my back beginning to bleed again as I looked around me. "It's gone," I said softly as I slowly got to my feet. I grabbed the metal pipe from the place it lay a few feet away from me and gripped it in my right hand. The air was still cold and something still felt off. My eyes darted around the empty stairwell, the staircases in front of me going up and down in different directions. "I can't confirm that, though," I said as I gripped my weapon tightly with 2 hands. My eyes landed on the deep scratches etched into the concrete. It cut through that concrete like it was paper. I choked as I took a step away from the deep gashes in the wall. The metal pipe in my hands felt useless now as the realization that the thing that hid within this level was extremely dangerous and lethal. "Why did it leave me, though?" I said as I turned to face the wall I had run into, knocking myself out mid-chase by running into solid concrete. "Something isn't right," I said as my eyes darted around frantically. The stairwell was dull and lifeless. The only signs of something being here was the deep scratches in the walls and stairs and the puddle of blood that I was laying in moments earlier. "I have to go back outside," I said as I began rushing down the staircase. The quick and sudden sounds of my footsteps as I raced down the steps echoed through the stairwell. I turned the corner and stopped in my tracks, my eyes landing on the mutilated body of a hound that laid at the bottom of the stairwell. It did that?" I choked as I stumbled back. The hound's neck was torn to shreds, and it was almost completely disemboweled with its dark, bluish-gray blood staining the concrete below. Deep gashes had been etched into the hound's body in multiple areas, its wounds causing it to bleed out. No, I have to get out of here," I choked as I stumbled past the mutilated corpse and went through the door out of the stairwell. I took one last look at the body behind me, the sense of fear and shock for what the creature on this level actually did to the things it came in contact with slamming deep into my soul. "It's daytime," I said as I sprinted through the empty first floor and over the rubble from the scratcher's claws that had obliterated the concrete wall just a few hours ago. I didn't know how long I was out, but it was daytime, meaning a lot of hours had passed. At least that's what I felt. I kicked off of the fallen chunks of concrete as I sprinted as fast as I could down the street, the lifeless city seeming more dangerous than it ever did before as my only weapon bounced against my thigh. I darted around the corner, running down a long, winding street that branched off into multiple sub-areas to more of the level. The expanse of winding asphalt streets stretched out in front of me as I ran as fast as I could away from the building I had almost lost my life in just a few hours ago. My heart pounded as the scratch marks on my back burned with immense pain. Fresh blood continued to soak my shredded shirt as my wounds failed to fully heal over and over, causing me to grow lightheaded and fatigued. "I need a place to rest and hide," I said with deep breaths as I glanced around, scanning the buildings around me as I ran for a safe place to escape or hide the next night's prowler with. My eyes stung and teared up as a powerful gust of wind swept through the barren cityscape, the cold rush of air winding through the buildings as I passed through the dull concrete wasteland. My chest burned as I began to slow down, my lungs screaming for me to stop and rest as I came to a stop. "I can't. No. I won't survive another attack when night falls. I need food, water, and a safe place to settle down for the night," I said as I looked at my surroundings. Massive crumbling buildings and apartment complexes line the streets as I reach for the sky, the dull-colored walls contrasting with the blue expanse of clear skies above. The apartments might have more supplies, if anything, I said as I glanced up at the clear sky. At the sky. The air began to grow cold as the blanket of shadows began to settle over the streets once again. Better now than ever, I said as I began running across the empty street towards an nearby abandoned apartment complex. The sounds of whispers filled the air as the city began to fill with shadows. "This better work," I muttered as I rammed into the front door, breaking the lock as it burst open, causing me to sprawl out on the front floor of the main lobby. Floor of the main lobby, damn. The scratchy gray carpet burned my skin as I scrambled to my feet. The fog slowly swept through the city as the landscape fell to the shadows. "I need to get as far away from the door as possible," I said as I quickly walked across the lobby towards the exposed stairwell. Ahead, the air was freezing cold and the lobby smelled of mold and past smoke. The floor was made up of scratchy gray carpet that was covered in stains and scratch marks. "These things were everywhere," I said as I stared at the entry desk. The old wooden desk was completely shredded, split in two parts by a set of sharp claws. I began speed-walking through the staircase as the sound of claws on concrete pierced the air. I darted through the stairwell door and slammed it shut, the sound of scratching stopping abruptly as I alerted the creature that its next meal was nearby. "Shit," I said as I left the door behind me. Darting up the staircase as I held the metal pipe in an attack position. Damn, I'm done after this chapter. I've been reading for 4 hours, bro. My leg muscles burned as I climbed floor after floor, slowing down on the 7th floor as I tried to catch my breath. "What the fuck is wrong with me?" I said as I glanced down the stairwell at the way I came. The sounds of scratching pierced my ears as I realized the creature was now inside. "It's hunting," I said fearfully as I ran away from the stairwell behind me, pushing through the old wooden door as I entered the 7th floor hallway and began trying to escape the predator that was close behind. Chapter 22 releases tomorrow. For people in the compilation, it releases in 3 seconds. Chapter 22. A predator hunts at midnight. Why you should never agitate scratchers in the backrooms. I sprinted down the hallway of the 7th floor, my feet slapping the faded red carpet as I ran as fast as I could for the end of the apartment complex. The sounds of the door for the entrance of the stairwell exploding off of its hinges filled the staircase as it floated down the hall and into my ears. "It's here," I said dreadfully as I darted down the empty hallway to the end of the corridor. The pale beige walls of the apartment's hallways became a blur as I slowed to a stop at the end of the hallway. "I have to hide. If it sees me, I'm definitely dead," I said as I rushed to the closest door and pushed it open, fumbling with the knob before entering the forgotten space beyond the doorway. The air was musty and felt heavy, a humid cloud settling over my skin as I entered the room and locked the door behind me. "Under the bed," I said quickly as I walked over to the large queen-sized bed in the middle of the room, the intricately designed wooden headboard sitting against the wall as it lay left to rot. I crouched down, lying on my stomach as I crawled into the cramped space under the bed frame. The mattress smelled strongly of mold and aged sweat as I squeezed underneath it. The cramped space hurt the large wounds embedded in my back as I pushed myself into the claustrophobic space to hide, the wooden boards holding the mattress and the frame digging deep into my back as I hid in the darkness and waited. 10 minutes passed with no sounds or signs of the creature, my lungs burning as I held my breath the best I could, starving my body of oxygen as I tried my best to survive. "Where is it?" I hissed as my head spun, my heart pounding in my chest as the feelings of uneasiness and restlessness filled my entire being. My eyes darted around frantically, scanning for any signs of the creature as I waited, my body and mind slowly growing sick of hiding in such a cramped and uncomfortable space in complete darkness. My heart stopped as the sounds of scratching filled the air, the chilling feeling of death brushed past me as I hid in the shadows. "It's literally on the same floor as me already?" I said nervously as my eyes darted around the darkness. The only things I could see were the faint outlines of the normal house furniture shrouded in shadows. The sound of scratching stopped abruptly as the sounds of another entity floated down the hallway. "There's a hound here too?" I cried, forgetting the need to be quiet entirely as my voice pierced the air. The sounds of both entities completely stopped before the sounds of claws tearing into flesh exploded into the hallway. The scratcher tearing into the hound's body as the sounds of ripping flesh and blood splattering made me sick to my stomach. The sound of yelping and cries of pain pierced my ears as the sickening smack of the hound's body against the walls filled the hallway. Everything was silent for a moment before the sounds of something slowly moving down the empty hallway floated through the air. My eyes filled with tears as an overwhelming worry that this level would be my final destination in this place. What? That was unfinished. I want to go home, I whispered sadly as tears raced down my cheeks, soaking the crusty red carpet of the apartment floor's room as I watched the door with overwhelming amounts of fear and sadness. The sounds of claws scraping against the crumbling concrete walls of the 7th floor filled my ears as I whimpered in fear. The scratching stopped as the creature stopped in front of the door, its chilling, uneven breathing drifting through the air as the door slowly creaked open. The room I was in slowly filled with light from the hallway, the bright yellow glow stopping inches from my face as I finally got a look at the creature. It was different from the one I had run into before, its claws resembling a series of sharp, curved talons with a black tint. The creature seemed to be undead, and was slender and thin, its long arms hanging down to its knees as it stood as tall as the door. Its eyes were human-like and filled with a burning lust to kill. My breath caught in my throat as the creature appeared to scan the room in front of it, its 2 nose holes opening and closing, and it appeared to sniff out the area as well. Its skin was a pale gray, and it was covered in scars and stitched wounds. These things are like reddish creatures, those ones I saw in the back way. They're human at one point, I thought to myself as I stared at the terrifying predatory creature in front of me, its slender and intimidating hunched-over posture paralyzing me with fear. The creature looked around the room again before abruptly stopping with its eyes in my direction. Shit. My mind raced as I tried to think of what to do, my heart jumping into my throat as the creature slowly ducked under the doorway and lumbered into the room. The air grew incredibly cold as it made a wailing sound, the eerie call sending chills through my entire body. My eyes watched the creature with fear as it slowly lumbered over to the bed, stopping a few inches in front of it as it emitted a low snarl. It knows I'm here, I said in my thoughts as I listened to the creature begin to detect its next victim. My head spun as the sounds of sharp claws ripping deep into the mattress above me pierced my ears. My heart soared, adrenaline shooting through my blood as the chilling sounds of tearing fabric shot throughout the room. I'm trapped, I thought to myself as the overwhelming feelings of dread and fear began to crush me to the core. I choked back tears as my life flashed before my eyes, the memories of my home being replaced with my experiences in the backrooms. I whimpered softly, causing the sounds of scratching to cut short as the creature appeared to search the area again. Its thin, bony feet lay just a few feet away from my face as it snarled loudly. My body screamed with fear as I began to cry, tears streaming down my face as I struggled to make no noise whatsoever. The creature shifted, its feet moving away from me as it lumbered for the door, turning its back to me as it slowly moved away from my location. My chest heaved as I struggled to hold my breath in longer, my lungs burning as I grew lightheaded. The recent scratches in my back stung as they became soaked with sweat. The creature wailed as it exited the room, seeming to sound like it was pained by the fact it couldn't kill again. Please leave, I whispered as those words filled my thoughts completely, my body trembling as I shook with fear. My vision blurred as tears poured down my face, my body giving up as I let my emotions loose. The slasher lumbered down the hallway and into the distance as I cried for my life in the dark. Sweat soaked my clothes as I sobbed silently, growing more and more tired as I exhausted any remaining energy I had left. My head spun as I grew weak, my eyes slowly moving around the room as my senses waved in and out. My entire body went numb as I passed out from exhaustion, my body laying underneath the bed in the dark as I left reality entirely, falling into a deep sleep as I drifted into the voids within my mind until I awoke again. Chapter 23, Claws That Cut Deep. Why you are never going to be prepared for a slasher encounter in the backrooms. I woke up under the bed with no memory of where I was or what happened. My entire body was extremely sore as I groggily crawled out from under the bed. What happened? I mumbled as I slowly got to my feet in the dark room. The air around me was cold, and there was a sense of uneasiness that still remained even after the creature had gone. The monster, I said as my eyes darted over to the door. My breath caught in my throat as I saw the deep gashes embedded deep in the wall, the creature possibly having sharpened its claws on its way out using the rough concrete that made up the building. I looked around the room I was in, struggling to see in the dark as I tried to take in my most recent surroundings. The bed I was under was completely destroyed, the mattress was shredded to pieces, the fluffy material inside littering the bedspread and the floor. It did that? I cried, my heart jumping to my throat once again as I stared at the shredded mattress that was just above me when the creature had searched the room. Sorry, I had to take a deep breath. The deep claw marks in the mattress were almost unrecognizable, due to the state the mattress was in after the creature attacked it out of pure frustration. The scratch marks in my back burned as I stretched, the sound of my body cracking and popping as my bones and muscles moved for the first time in hours, filling the room as I floated down the hallway. I looked around, letting myself relax a bit as I searched for a light switch. Maybe there's supplies in these rooms, I muttered as I walked over to the dresser on the opposite side of the room, opening the top drawer to reveal a beat-up flashlight. Sorry, got a notification that distracted me. Already? I cried as I grabbed the flashlight from its spot inside the dresser and flicked the power button. The flashlight flickered before turning on, sending a dim beam of white light to the left wall as it lit up a small section of the room. I powered the flashlight back off, smiling as I slid it into my back pocket. If only I had a backpack, then I wouldn't have to put all this stuff in my pockets. I wish that wretch hadn't taken it previously, I said to myself as I opened the next two drawers. The two middle drawers had nothing but dust and mold inside of them, possibly having no purpose at all compared to the top and bottom drawer of the dresser. I pulled open the bottom drawer to find a roll of gauze and a set of batteries. Yes! I cried as I grabbed the gauze and put it next to me on the ground. The air grew colder as I looted the rest of the drawers, grabbing batteries and scraps that I could possibly use at one point as I scoured the room for resources. I stopped at the foot of the bed, gripping the gauze in my right hand as I looked around. There doesn't seem to really be anything else here, I said softly as I stared at the set of sliding closet doors in front of me. I glanced around nervously, my eyes landing on the shredded mattress just a few feet away from me as memories of my close encounters with death on this level flooded my mind. I swallowed, staring at the half-open door that led out of the room as my throat went dry. I have to go out there. Even if that thing is smart and patient enough to wait for me there could be more supplies, I said as I began walking for the door. My head spun, my vision blurring a bit as a painful headache started up. The sound of my gym shoes walking on the carpet floated through the door and down the hallway as I stopped in front of the doorway. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to stop as I slowly pulled the door open even more, letting more light into the room as I peered out into the hallway. My eyes stung as they slowly adjusted to the intense change of lighting before my vision cleared, allowing me to properly scan the hallway ahead for threats. The hound? I choked as I stumbled back into the room. The door swung open a bit more as my heels dug into the carpet. The mutilated body of the hound remained unmoving in the hallway, its darkish blue blood staining the walls and floor around it as the deep scratch marks embedded in its body showed an even bigger threat was out there. That thing did that? I cried as I stumbled back over to the door, looking into the hallway again. The scratchy red carpet was stained with dark blue splotches as the hound's body lay rotting away on the ground of the 7th floor hallway. I stared at the mutilated corpse in horror, my eyes staring directly at the scratch marks that went through the hound's entire body. That thing's claws cut deep, I mumbled fearfully as I stepped into the hallway. There were no windows, so I didn't know what time of day it was, but I needed more supplies, creature of death or not. Just go to the next room over, I choked as I continued to stare at the shredded body of the hound up ahead in the middle of the hallway. I fumbled with the doorknob on the door to my left before pushing the door open, entering the room directly next to the one I was hiding in. The overpowering stench of mold and rotting carpet hit me like a truck as I staggered back. Holy shit, this room stinks! I choked as tears filled my eyes. I stared into the darkness and observed the interior of the room I had to enter next, spotting multiple items I possibly needed. I really need supplies, though. I'm not going to escape the creature on this level if I'm starved to death or dehydrated, I said sternly as I entered the room. Sorry. The floorboards under the carpet creaked as I walked across the room, making my way to the dresser on the far wall. I slipped the flashlight out of my pocket and turned it on, shining the dim blue. Damn, I'm sorry. It took 5 minutes for me to mess up. I slipped the flashlight out of my pocket and turned it on, shining the dim beam of light in the direction of the dresser as I blindly walked through the darkness. Dust and mold spores filled my nose as the urge to sneeze came over me, causing me to slow down and scrunch my nose. No, don't sneeze, I muttered as I tried to hold back the oncoming loud noise that would alert any nearby entities. I sniffed, making it worse as I shook my head fearfully. Within seconds, I couldn't hold back anymore, my head jerking forwards as I sneezed loudly. My eyes blurred as I grew lightheaded. I told you not to sneeze, I said to myself angrily as I looked around, shining my flashlight towards the door. I stared at the doorway with a growing sense of dread as the sounds of movement filled the air. I darted over to the dresser, crouching down as I clicked off my flashlight. The room was bathed in darkness as I stared at the open door. watching the hallways for any sign of life as I looked ahead dreadfully. The wooden legs of the dresser dug into my waist as I crouched down in the shadows, waiting for death to come prowling as I listened carefully. The distant sounds of movement grew fainter as whatever creature lurked within the very halls I was exploring gave up searching for the source of the noise. I waited for a few minutes, remaining crouched in the corner as I stayed to confirm the coast was truly clear. Fucking idiot, I muttered to myself as I slowly got to my feet. My calves and thighs burned as my head spun, a powerful wave of lightheadedness taking over me as I stumbled, almost losing my balance as my body adjusted to the sudden changes. I gripped my flashlight in my right hand, hesitantly flicking it back on as I turned to face the dresser. The old wooden drawers were covered in a layer of unidentifiable bacteria, possibly a species of mold only found here, and the brass knobs were covered in an almost black layer of grime. Moment of truth, I mumbled as I opened the first drawer. The top compartment was empty, making me exhale through my nose angrily. I opened the second drawer, revealing a pile of broken glass. This room has jack shit, I said angrily as I opened the next drawer. Nothing. I stared at the bottom drawer, crouching down slightly as something deep in my mind told me it wasn't worth opening. Final drawer, I said hesitantly as I wrapped my fingers around the brass knob and pulled, opening the drawer. Holy shit! I cried as a beat-up combat knife with a black rubber handle revealed itself, the weapon sitting in the darkness as it laid in the back corners of the drawer. There's no fucking way, I said as I grabbed the knife handle and lifted it out of the drawer, shining my flashlight beam over as I stared at the weapon in my hands in awe. I knew there were weapons here. I fucking knew it, I cried as I turned the knife over, staring at the sharp metal blade as I grinned with excitement and pure pride. My legs felt weak as I stood up, gripping the combat knife tightly in my left hand as I shined my flashlight over the bed next to me. The covers were matted and torn, as if something had shredded them at some point, and the mattress is a sickeningly dirty yellow. I guess it was kind of worth it, I muttered as I glanced down at the knife in my hand, still getting over the intense shock I felt when I first saw the helpful weapon lying deep in the back of the dresser's bottom drawer. I stared ahead, shining my light at the closet doors at the far end of the room before snapping out of it. If I want to continue making progress, I need another supply bag, I said to myself sternly as I reminded myself of my main goal. Fuck, I heard something in the dark, damn. Fucking 10 o'clock at night. I exited the room slowly, clicking on my flashlight as I entered the hallway, glancing around nervously as I scanned for any threats. The room across from the one I was in should be fine, I said as I quickly crept across the hallway, pushing the door straight across from the room I had just left as I entered the next apartment. The air was heavy and dense, and the stench of dust and old furniture filled my nose. Every single one of these rooms stinks, I muttered as I scrunched my nose, trying to get used to the sudden change in smell. I held the knife at the ready as I slowly crept through the darkness, not wanting to turn my flashlight on again until I could be sure the room was empty. Anyone? I said softly as I looked around. The room is completely void of life. The thick, dense air seemed to have been the result of the apartment being left alone for years upon years. Nope, should be safe, I mumbled as I flicked my flashlight on, shining the dim beam of light at the closet doors. The sounds of snarling came from behind as I whipped around. The bed! My mind screamed as I came face to face with the hound. The creature had locked eyes with me, staring me directly down as it prepared to attack. Don't move, I said to myself as I maintained eye contact, gripping my combat knife tightly. The hound snarled before jumping at me, its clawed feet aimed at my neck. I dove to the side, swinging the combat knife as I rolled to the ground. The blade cut through the hound's chest with ease, splattering blue blood all over the side of the bed and the floor. The hound yelped in pain as it crashed to the ground, the gash in its chest pouring blood all over the carpet. The hound snarled angrily, its thirst for blood now unstoppable as it lunged at my neck with the razor-sharp teeth. I rolled to the right, swinging my knife at the hound's neck as it kicked back, losing its footing as the blade sliced through its main arteries. Blue blood splattered onto the walls as I scrambled to my feet. The hound snarled angrily before whimpering in pain, the 2 deep gashes in its body causing it to begin to bleed out. That's what you get, you stupid bitch! I cried as I stared down at the creature with thirst to kill. For ruining my fucking life! I screamed as I lunged forward, slashing outwards with my blade torn in the hound's face and neck. Its blood splattered onto my clothes and face as I swung one last time, slicing through the hound's chest as I sunk my blade deep into its heart. The hound's body went limp as its blood pooled around it. The creature laying dead as the life left its soulless black eyes. It's what every one of the fucking creature in this place fucking is gonna deal with. Damn, I ruined it. I'm sorry. That's what every fucking creature in this fucking place is going to deal with. I'm fucking done with this place. I cried as I stared at the lifeless body in front of me, gripping the blood-covered combat knife tightly as I panted heavily. My chest heaved as I snapped out of my blind rage, stumbling back as I stared at the body of the hound that lay near my feet. Deep slashes and cuts covered the body of the creature as its blood soaked everything around it. Its eyes stared lifelessly ahead, its blank stare aimed at the wall to my left. Shit. Fucking. Fuck what? Shit. God. Did I just do that? I choked as I dropped. I keep hearing fucking noises, dude. I choked as I dropped the knife, the blood-covered blade falling to the ground as I fell to my knees. My head spun as I stared at the cut-up corpse in front of me, my throat going dry as I choked back tears. What? What is this place doing to me? I choked as I stared at the mutilated body that laid a few feet away. My chest heaved as I grabbed the knife off the ground, gripping the rubber handle tightly as I leapt to my feet. I need to get out of here, I cried as I hastily looked around in the darkness. The shadows surrounding me began to feel heavy and painful as I sprinted through the door. I need to get out of here, I repeated, my head spinning as thousands of emotions poured into me at once. Tears streamed down my face as I blindly ran into the hallway, kicking off the ground as I darted straight down the empty corridor. My feet slapped the carpet as the hound's blood began to dry into my clothes. I need to get out of here, I choked as my throat ran dry, my mind going numb as my heart pounded furiously in my chest. I need to get out of here. I need to get out of here. I repeated. What the fuck? I repeated. Sorry, that is a typo. I'm deleting it. I repeated, my voice sounding completely dead and lifeless as I stared blankly ahead at the door leading into the stairwell. I ran past the mutilated body of the hound that got caught by the scratcher, my shoes becoming stained with the creature's blue blood as I sprinted past the shredded corpse. I need to get out of here, I said as I slammed into the door, pushing through the doorway as I ran into the stairwell. I gripped the combat knife tightly in my right hand as I sprinted down the stairs, my feet slapping the cold concrete as I hurriedly made my way down the staircase. I slowed down as Fuck, I'm so close to the end, dude. I slowed down as my lungs burned, entering the first floor stairwell as I burst through the lobby door. Shit, I said as I muttered as my heart caught in my chest. Fucking hell. The slasher from before stood in the lobby, hunched over the mutilated body of an unidentifiable entity that was likely caught by it the night before. I gripped the combat knife as I darted Man, I wouldn't be surprised if people clicked off the video by now. It's like the climax and I fucked it up. I gripped the combat knife tightly as I darted right, running along the far wall as I made my way to a set of double doors. The slasher howled, sending chills down my spine as its chilling cry pierced the air. It dropped the mutilated corpse in its hands and turned. Its eyes locked on the stairwell doors as they slammed shut. The loud crash echoed through the lobby as I slipped through the set of double doors, letting them close behind me as I darted down a dimly lit hallway with crumbling concrete walls. I need to get out of here, I said fearfully as the sounds of the slasher quickly approaching the doors I had escaped through filled my ears. The sounds of my footsteps echoed down the empty hallway as I approached a left turn. I can't let it see me, I said to myself as I darted left, tripping over my own feet as I crashed into a dead end. The air around me changed in temperature massively, the air becoming dense and humid as I went through the wall, somehow transporting me to somewhere else as everything went dark. Y'all ain't ready for what's coming next, dude. Y'all ain't ready.